So I kind of want to move on to, our third automation, which is cycle counting. We hear that a lot of operations, their cycle counting process is paper-based and requires data entry. Jack, how does ShipHawk, execute cycle counts?
Sure. Well, all I have to say is paper-based cycle counting. I used to work in an operation that we paper-based cycle counted, and that's sort of how I started on this path of WMS. And I can tell you all that data entry was one of my least favorite things to do. Just keying in numbers, keying in items, keying in locations. It was never a fun thing to do. We always dreaded it. And like I said, that's what we want to avoid with our WMS. We don't want users to have to really feel the strain of, oh, we have this upcoming count this weekend. We're going to spend the next 48 hours just entering into Excel. So what our system does in terms of cycle counting, and I've actually got that right here, is giving you a system-directed process to actually capture and record those results. So instead of writing them on paper, putting them into Excel, then uploading them into a system, we actually are going to take your users through an actual count process, drive you to a location, and then tell you how much or tell you what SKUs to count, and then let the user blindly enter the actual data. So we have a lot of different types of cycle counts in our system. And you're seeing one right here, which is an interleave cycle count. And this is probably my favorite. It's a great feature that we released in I believe Q1 of this year. And what it allows you to do is during the picking process, if we identify that a location has low quantity, which is a system level configuration, we essentially require the user to do a count back at that time. So if I had 10 in my location, and maybe for me, low quantity is anything below 8, and I go and pick 4 out of that, the system says, hey, you only have 6 remaining. Tell me physically how much is there. We all know that there are times where numbers get out of whack, right? We thought we had 10, but we actually had 9. We thought we had 10, but we actually had 12. This is an opportunity for a very efficient and very quick cycle count to essentially reconfirm that information and make sure that we are on the right track. If we ever have an exception, we're going to track that behind the scenes right here on our review cycle count history. And I'm going to walk through this actually in the UI, but just love to highlight that we're keeping track of historical details. So no more of that, like I said, paper or Excel and hoping that nothing gets messed up or deleted. Our system's keeping an eye on all of this behind the scenes. And then with that, we have a manager approval step where we actually, before we send that inventory adjustment to the ERP, like a NetSuite or Acumatica, we actually really want a manager to go through, approve those transactions. So that way we're not having to, sort of guess who did what and what's what, right? We can see that, hey, this person approved this count on this day at this time. So what we'll actually do is we'll jump back into the environment right here and just go into a quick cycle count. So what I'm going to pull up on the left-hand side of my screen is just a dashboard. So you can sort of see the outputs of a cycle count in our system. And then what I'm going to do right here on the right-hand side of my screen is actually walk through a quick cycle count example. So what I've got right here is my count rules where I can decide, do I want to count a bin, a specific item, a low quantity, right? I wish I could ask, but if you're on this call, you can raise your hand, give me a thumbs up. If you've ever had an item where you said, oh yeah, system, we've got 10 of those. You show up to the location and you have none, or they're damaged, right? So important that we want to give you the ability to count every location that has that low quantity. As I say, maybe before peak ramps up, you really need to cycle count a specific item or set of items. So that way going into Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you have that inventory. So what I'm going to do right here is scroll down and hit that begin directed put or directed counting. So this is system driven. Actually, I'm going to do a manual count right here where I'm actually going to travel to a location. And then the system is going to ask me what item ID. And I'm just going to say, we'll pick this guy right here. We'll say that this item exists here. And then it's a blind count. So we're never going to tell the user how much is available to them. So that way they must count physically what's there. So I'm going to say that there are 50 available to me, and those are all good. If I needed to reclassify as holder damaged, that would be, that's supported right here. So common that, hey, you walk by something, by a location, you say, something's a little bit off. I need to put that quantity on hold. You can easily do that with a really quick and efficient cycle count right here. And then we're going to save that count. And then the system's going to allow me to continue on from here. And in a directed manner, the system's always going to drive us to the next location, which could be based off of maybe item velocity. So maybe you always want to count your A items once a week, and then your B items once a month, and then your C items once a quarter. That's something that ShipHawk can absolutely support to help our customers, once again, automate that, not have to think about, when was the last time we actually counted this product, right? Let the system stay on top of that for you behind the scenes. So then what we have right here is our actual dashboard. So as these cycle counts are completed and accepted, we're actually dropping them into a great dashboard so you can review those results. So if I were to look at this by day, by week, by month, and I'm going to pull this into a monthly view just so you can kind of see. We're going to show you the number of items, bins counted, what those variances are, how many units were counted, gross net values, all leading up to the very important number of net accuracy. I always love when people on the financial or controlling side see this, they always say, wait a second, so I can know exactly what is happening in terms of inventory adjustments and net accuracy from one page? Absolutely. So if I were to pull this into a yearly view, I'd be able to see, hey, for 2022, we were 87.3% accurate in my warehouse. But so far in 2023, over the last 5 months of the year, we've been 100% accurate. Really easy to report on and communicate how good of a cycle counting, how robust and clued in you are on your inventory accuracy. And then the last step here is to actually talk about that manager approval step. So actually jumping into our counts right here, and by hitting review results, and then we're presented with some filters. We hear all the time that some customers, maybe their CFO or finance team says, hey, anything under $100, you can go ahead and automatically approve, right? There's no need to actually, spend time reviewing all those. But then maybe you want to look at a specific employee counter, right? Maybe Jack is not the best counter, right? Then we need to review what they had to do for the day and see that they were actually correct or not. So I'm going to go ahead and hit resolve counts right here. And then I'm brought into that page where I can see every single count task record. I can see what item it is. I can see how it was generated, whether it's on demand, whether it's an interleave cycle count, whether it's a short pick. So important. In our picking process, when we short pick an item, we assume that is a miniature cycle count, essentially telling us there are 0 units there. If we ever allow the user to go to the alternate bin during a pick, we say, hey, we want somebody to go check that location out to make sure and verify what's actually there. So just from this screen, we can always jump in here to the history. And like I showed you on that screenshot earlier, is review that history, see the count variance across multiple counts in a really simplistic way with a great chart. I love this chart. Say, we're visual beings as humans. And so this is a great way to, instead of just look at data and spreadsheets, to say, hey, count 1 was 23 units negative variance, but the second count was 1. Maybe for me as an operations leader, I say, I need them to be closer together before I approve it. Or maybe that they found inventory and that's why we cycle counted it this way. We could always accept that latest count, push that inventory transaction back up to the ERP and be on with our merry way.